Thank you very much, Zoltan. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be here again. If I may ask my learned colleagues and panelists to come on the stage and take a seat. I can sit here in the... Right. So, artificial intelligence. It's been a buzzword for at the various conferences, especially for the past half a decade at least. There's been lots of talk about AI, but now, especially with what's happening around ChatGPT 4 and it's launched recently, like there's even a greater hype and a buzz around it, and I think you've probably all seen it in the media. Everyone's asking about, how we can use it, what it means, and so everyone's talking about AI these days, and it's actually pretty difficult to keep up, and because there is development pretty much every day. And it gets to the point where there are voices which are actually calling for a bit of a pause. I don't know if you noticed the open letter yesterday that numerous sort of AI sort of leaders or thought leaders, including the likes of Steve Wozniak, but also Elon Musk, controversial person, surely. So yesterday there was this open letter where they are calling for a pause in basically AI development for 6 months, because it just goes too fast, and we should probably step back a little bit and evaluate the consequences. So against this background, we're going to focus on artificial intelligence, especially in the world of gaming and gambling. And let me introduce you our panelists. So sitting right next to me is Pál Bóza, who is a co-founder at Tremo, a startup that is based in Paris and that focuses on especially on content moderation solutions or tools. He will definitely tell us more about it. He has experience both from business and the public sector, even though he was telling me he's definitely not an AI expert, but I think he is actually. It's just too modest to say so. Next, we have Petr Bratský, who is a managing associate at Kinsteller in the Prague office, in an international law firm that is pretty much everywhere in Central Europe, and he heads up the local TMT group and focuses a lot on sort of media, entertainment law, data protection, cybersecurity, stuff like that. So definitely very well placed to speak about the subject of AI law. And then, last but certainly not the least, we have Štěpán Kopřiva, who is the CTO at Blindspot Solutions, a company that recently became also hyped a little bit in the Czech Republic because they came up with the AI prediction of the outcome of presidential elections, and everyone was just super surprised how accurate the prediction was. But Blindspot Solutions is actually doing lots of other stuff with AI, and so we'll also hear about that. So to warm up, I would like to ask all of you, and before we get to gaming and gambling, I would want to ask you about what AI solutions you come across in your daily practice, what you do actually with respect to AI, and so what is actually the current state of play of AI in your area, because I think they can be very different points of view. So Pál, if you may.
Thank you very much for starting, and thank you for having me here today. So, as you've heard in the introduction, we work in the online content moderation space, and in this space, basically, we see loads of new so-called user-generated content. What does it mean? Someone posting a photo on Twitter, on any kind of social media, but this can go much farther than that. So it can be, for instance, an online newspaper who has comments below different articles. And it can get very complicated in the sense what is user-generated content. We have games where some users can create their own world. These can be objects, these can be anything that is drawn, and that's also user-generated content. So how does AI relate to this? Is that in this space, in order to moderate these online world, these online contexts, there is more and more AI tool, we call them AI detection tools, that are being used. And these are integrated into different content moderation systems. So my day-to-day is we provide end-to-end online content moderation for different type of platforms, including online games as well. And so we have an experience from that, both from a consulting and both from a product point of view. And just last word on it. So these solutions are concentrating on images, on voice, on text, and so on. So it's hugely evolving. What's the state of the art? I mean, AI is important. It can save a lot of time and effort on behalf of the detection, but it's not perfect yet. I don't think it will be 100% perfect either. But I mean, in general, you would expect like a 70–80% of accuracy. Of course, depending on the different type of contents which you have online. That's as a first word.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll stay in the business for a while, so I'm turning to Štěpán. And so what about you, Blind Spot Solutions and AI?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. So basically, as Wojciech already said, we are developing custom AI solutions for startups, multinational companies as well. And we've been in the business for 10 years already, so I do have some perspective. And these days, I do get the hype around generative AI. So that's everybody is asking about ChatGPT-4, how can we use it in our business? Before that, it was Midjourney, so generating images and all that stuff. But I do believe that even though these new technologies are very powerful and I would say transformational, there is the so-called old AI, which is used for predictions, detections, and so on. And we do see the implementations in daily business rising rapidly, saving lots of money, and doing that in scale. So I do believe that even though there is this hype of ChatGPT and similar stuff, there is like it allows the adoption of the other AI technology as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And so Petr, as a lawyer, what's your take on AI? Whether you're seeing it on the client side, or is AI also something that you deal with it on the sort of legal tech side? Tell us about it.
Thank you very much, Wojciech, and thank you for all being here and for welcoming me here. I see it on both sides. On the client side, I was very lucky to already help some of the clients that actually not only use but also develop themselves the AI solutions, especially those clients in the pharmaceutical industry. And I've seen the big development in that area, especially in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. They use these solutions, for instance, for better design of clinical trials, for accelerating the drug development and medicine development. So especially in that, I see very interesting and positive development, because it not only helps them to generate amazing results in very short time, but can actually help the mankind. Some of them are very interested, especially those, as I said, in the pharma industry, about the fact that there is this draft AI Act actually being prepared at the European institutions. So we already lecture with respect some of them internally on what is this AI Act going to take place, what kind of compliance obligations they will likely have to meet in the future, and what is the impact of this legislation on those clients. With respect to working internally, I also see interesting development these days because some of my colleagues, including myself, try to use this hype of the ChatGPT. We use it for our research. We've already tried it a couple of times. In some cases, it worked almost perfectly, especially with respect to finding the right case law, with respect to finding the right doctrine to search for. On the other hand, I'm also happy to say that we, with respect to those solutions, implement also human oversight because, of course, some of the results have been really good. On the other hand, sometimes it missed from time to time certain spots, and that is when us actually humans had to step in again and try to corrigate a little bit the results of such solutions.
I must say, just a quick reaction to that point. Of course, I tried it also for sort of legal research, and I had actually a different experience, which made me realize that ChatGPT is still just a language model. It's not really a good research tool, also because the data that actually it feeds on are relatively old. So for me, the results produced a beautifully drafted text with reference to case law, which looked very interesting. But then the human element found out that none of that case law existed. And I mean, like, none of it. It just looked like, something that looks like legitimate. It wasn't. Yeah. So anyway, I think we should get to the gaming and gambling area, which is the topic of this conference mainly. So if I can ask you, where do you see the greatest potential for AI solutions for the betting and video gaming industries? I don't know Stepan, do you want to start?
Yeah, maybe let me start. So I do see three parts where AI has got a big potential. The first one is focused on revenue generation, basically focusing on customer, and there I would say the big part is recommending the content for the customers. So basically, if you are a betting company, you want to show your users the best content, the most interesting matches in the application, being it a mobile one or a web one. So that's the first area. The second, to this area, there is also communication with the clients. So basically, any chatbots these days, ChatGPT might be used for that as well. So automating the communication, thus enhancing the quality. So that's the first area. The second area, I would say, is more focused on back office. There it would be fraud detection and any anomaly detection in that big data. So automatically detecting suspicious behavior is a big thing for AI. And I would say that for betting companies, it's also automatically getting the events from the real world. So for example, from image from cameras, getting what happened on the pitch. So that's also a big field. And then the third one would be definitely generative AI as we see it these days. So basically generating any new worlds for the games. So, I saw an example where people were playing these role-playing games, and they could generate the world for themselves. So basically, the game asked them, okay, so what world do you would like to play in? And they would say, I wanna be a magician in the medieval times, and I wanna maybe fight some elves and stuff like that, and that can be generated these days. So I do see a huge potential in generative AI usage as well.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on that, or on the generative AI aspect?
Yeah, sure. It's a very, very interesting development with respect to the generative AI, especially I see it in the video gaming and entertainment industry, because you can actually, I think the positive is you can actually generate and accelerate the generating as much content as is possible in very short time. So some of the big players and interesting players in this industry will be able to create much more content, I would say, in a very short time. That's one thing. The negative part of it, as some may say, is the fact that some of these people say that it may also disrupt the job market, and that actually some say that some people in the entertainment industry could lose jobs or it could cause redundancy. On the other hand, I think to certain little extent, yes. On the other hand, I believe, again, as I said before, in the human creation and in the human mind. So, I mean, those that actually create unique works won't lose their job. I think those that will stand out won't lose the job, and those that can actually use those tools that are available at the market at the moment and can add something on top, they will definitely don't be redundant.
Okay. Hopefully, we'll see.
Hopefully.
Paul, you mentioned that you were sort of consulting or that you were involved for a sort of large online gaming platform. So what were the sort of the biggest issues in sort of in implementing AI tools, or what it was about, to the extent that you can say?
Yeah. Before answering this, just one comment on the previous question. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Europol has issued a message or a warning about ChatGPT's possibilities of being able to generate all kind of written content. We work closely with law enforcement agencies, with the French Ministry of Interior, also related to online content, and with the Europol as well. And we see the fear, for instance, terrorists being able to create much more content online, also in different chat modes and so on. And Europol has already recognized that related to ChatGPT as well, and something will happen in that case. And just that was my small reaction to the previous question. So what are the issues in online gaming? Yeah, so we work with major clients in the online gaming industry. What do these clients do? So they have several, sometimes dozens of online games, and these games have different type of user-generated content. Actually, I'm going to generalize here. Usually, these are in the forms of chat. So gamers, multiplayer gamers, they are chatting online. Why is this something interesting? Because there is the new regulation which is coming, the Digital Services Act. Basically, it's going to fundamentally change the responsibility of platforms, and probably, and most probably, that's what I can say also for the game in the gaming industry. Since until now, when there is user-generated content on your platform, you are not responsible for it. But in the future, if you are aware of the content, so if there is, for instance, something illegal on your platform, and the user notices you about this, then you become liable, and you will be hosting an illegal content, and you will have to act upon it based on different legal circumstances. So, but back to your question, this situation is gonna create a fundamental new use case for different AI applications. What's interesting is that it's not compulsory for the in the Digital Services Act to deploy AI detection tools, but most of the companies do, and. So the main challenge is that you have different type of content. You have images, text, and videos, and all type of content that you can imagine. And not all the tools are perfect for each type of content. So very often they use different and several tools to make sure that they can discover it. And also, once it's being discovered, it doesn't say, it's not binary. It doesn't say like this is a gun. The tool will say with 80% of chance, we are seeing a gun on this picture, and then it's up to the platform to decide what to do with that information. And usually, what happens is that there are content moderators sitting behind and really have to decide on it. And with the Digital Services Act, this is going to have to be much more the case. So, very quickly, issues: Digital Services Act creating a new situation, need of different type of tools. These tools are not always in line with the needs of the platform. Sometimes actually data and algorithms are trained specifically to the needs of the given platforms. And thirdly, questions of accuracy around AI.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what we're sort of coming at is that it's while we can be looking at AI as something very positive that is going to change the world, it's clearly not just blue sky and sun is shining. So obviously there are lots of risks and negative aspects or barriers, as we may call it, in AI. And so I would want to ask Szczepan and potentially also the others. again, in the sort of gaming industry, what do you see as the biggest risk? And I mean, you mentioned fraud detection, but at the same time, the fraudsters are very likely to be using AI tools as well. And I can immediately think of AI spotting, the mistakes in sports betting and sort of targeting, the sure bets or you don't want to probably play poker against an AI machine that has basically no emotions whatsoever. So I've been thinking for a long time, what happens if there is clash of technologies when AI sort of goes up against another AI? What's your view on that? How do you see it?
So I do see it as a risk. It depends always on the game. In the context of gaming and betting, it always depends on the game. What AI brings in is number one, the intelligence. That's like the first piece. However, the second piece is also the scalability. So if there would be anyone to trick any system or game mechanism for gambling and betting for like more complex games, using AI can definitely do that. So he can or she in scale. So in large scale, they can affect the game by multiple machines, and with the generative stuff, they can do it. Even using like the forums, the discussion rooms, and so on. So they can not only affect the game mechanism, but also opinion on that. And with ChatGPT, it might be easy like that. It's like creating conversations for thousands of people online. So I believe it's a powerful tool, and at the same time, and on the other hand, there are researchers and the companies working on AI detection tools, and it might be in the future, and to some degree, for example, in cyber, it always is the, let's say, conflict of two types of technologies. So it's already happening.
Yeah. And the problem with technologies is they're very fast. They're being developed very fast, which is something that definitely cannot be said about the law and regulation, even though we are now in the age of a bit of a death by regulation, as I call it, because there is just so many coming at us from Brussels. Paul mentioned the DSA, the Digital Services Act. There are a number of others in the digital agenda of the European Commission, and another one is the Prepared AI Act. And again, it hit the news quite soon after ChatGPT-4 that probably the legislators will have to go back to the drawing table and probably rewrite the draft legislation. So, Petr, what is it about, if you can very briefly sort of tell us something about the regulatory aspects of AI as it's currently planned or as it currently stands?
Well, also from, as you mentioned before, the ethical point of view, what I see an interesting point is the draft AI regulation. I don't know if you read it, some of you, or if you've seen it, but from ethical point of view, I was very happy to see at the moment that the ethical aspect in the draft AI regulation is clearly stated multiple times in the preamble as the main principle. And secondly, it is also kind of like embedded in the actual organization of this piece of legislation as well, because it has brought this risk-based approach. And based on this risk-based approach, it basically classifies those AI systems into different clusters. And it also brings the fact that some of those AI systems are explicitly prohibited, such as those, let's say, social scoring models used for the society, how we've seen, for instance, that have been trained or used in China, for example, some sort of like those manipulative AI systems that actually could possibly manipulate with behavior with vulnerable groups such as minors, such as elderly people, etc. This is, I think, the right way to do and the right approach, that, okay, those AI systems are strictly prohibited and we cannot use them within the EU. On the other hand, very difficult job will have especially the companies that produce, and that's what the AI Act says, are those high-risk AI systems. Because if you manufacture this high-risk AI system, then you will need to meet very strict new obligations. And some of those obligations are, for instance, you will need to draft technical documentation. You will need to inform in very precise way the users on what is actually how the AI system works. For instance, you will need to get a certificate of conformity, etc. So this is kind of very strict compliance obligations that come in place. On the other hand, sometimes I see the legislature trying to understand the industry and how it works in practice. So recently I heard that in Brussels they are actually discussing, for example, with respect to those conformity assessment and conformity designations, that there could be possibly a mechanism that if you get this conformity designation somewhere else, let's say in the US, that there is going to be some kind of recognition mechanism. But from this, you actually see there is, as you said, Wojciech, still lots of work to do, and I don't think it's going to be finalized by the end of the year, that's for sure.
Thank you. Pauli wanted to add.
Yes, just I think regulating AI is a fascinating topic, and which I have also been following a little bit. And just some anecdotes or some examples. Also in the pharmaceutical industry, you have for instance, machine which you will be using, but it will be collecting also data while you are using it in the health sector. But with the data, it changes the way it works. So it's very difficult to make any kind of to put a stamp on it that it works as it should work, since it changes the way it works all the time. And the same, how will you regulate such an industry, and how will you regulate these kind of tools? And the AI regulation is there on the table for 2 years now, and this risk-based approach is really interesting. I think it's really forward-looking. However, with ChatGPT, there is a big question mark now on the table of the European Commission. They might have to go back and start from the beginning, also rethinking the risk-based approach, whether the type of these type of language models, in which risk category they will fit. And so what I wanted to say as a takeaway is, it seems, I mean, we all know this, that technology is developing at a very high speed, and it's quite difficult for the regulation to take this speed, and the AI regulation is a wonderful example of this.
And what happens also is the fact that usually when you develop these rules that are going to be EU-wide, it takes, let's say, 4 or 5 years sometimes, right? 3 years, something like that. And when we saw the outburst of those technologies, let's say in the last 2 years, usually they are much faster than the legislative creators. So it's very difficult to keep up the pace with that.
True, very true. So, and because I'm conscious of time, so I'll be probably driving this to a close. So maybe a last round of ideas, regulation aside. So where do you see this all going? What about this democratization of AI? You know, what's going to happen when AI is available to all? I mean, will be gamers better off? You know, will the industry be better off? And maybe a provocative question: would you sign the open letter together with Elon Musk? Should we pause with the AI developments? Stepan.
So let me start with the question. I wouldn't sign it. I think that if we stop the development, number one, not everybody will be compliant with that, right? There will be probably countries or even individuals who would not stop the research. Number two, it brings a lot of good stuff as well as a bad stuff. So if we would postpone the development by half a year or whatever they propose, then that means that that also a lot of good things would be stopped, and it's scary to some degree, and there will be some regulation which would need to come, obviously, but I wouldn't sign the letter. So that's the first one. And then for gaming, I believe that it can really bring a lot to the business, especially with the generative stuff. There might be all new worlds created, keeping in mind that it also somehow affects the behavior of the people. And I wanted to have one more remark on that. It's not just the regulation, but also letting the people know that they are somehow, you know, that their decision is based on facts which are produced by AI. So you can see it already in the digital world today, social networks, or even the shops. If you buy something, the system shows you something very different than to your neighbor, maybe. And so you are, to some degree, intrigued by AI already, but you are not aware of it. And that's where I see the biggest risk.
Yeah, and if I add to Stepan, I wouldn't also sign the letter, probably, because I wouldn't like the development to be stopped, because it can actually bring many positives, as we have already discussed today. On the other hand, I believe that actually not signing this letter, but bringing other people to the table with those developers from different industries, from a different point of view, such as even like, as we discuss ethics, also philosophers, legislative makers, all the people, also artists, etc. I think if we actually try to pull all the people and great minds together from different industries, different sectors, with different minds, then we can actually work with it together, and I think this should be the message.
So, answers to two questions. The first one, where is this going and where we see ourselves? I mean, this is a huge question, and let me narrow it into one topic, and let be that, for instance, the decision-making of AI, what I see in that and what research actually says in that sector. So previously, humans are taking the decisions, and in most cases, in most systems, it's being required that it's the human that's going to take that. In healthcare, it's the case, and also in content moderation, the Digital Services Act requires that if there is a notice from a user, then a human sees it. So a machine cannot say that this user complaint is good or bad. Someone needs to look at it, basically. So what I want to come is that the next 10 years or 15 years, in my opinion, is still going to be humans plus machine decision-making together. And of course, a human is more efficient if it's being supported by the informations from machines. And I mean, we can see that this coming. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years or 15 times. If 15 years time, that would be, of course, a speculation. On the signature of this letter, I mean, I haven't been officially asked, but thank you now for asking.
I think it's open for everyone.
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm also on the opinion that this is something which you cannot prohibit, in a sense. I understand where the problem comes from, of course, and I agree with what has been said. Just let me add a new angle. So AI has become a geopolitical question already. It's a question of competitiveness on a geopolitical level. And we've discussed, for instance, that in the EU it will be prohibited social scoring or also recognition of image because of personal data. However, China has this technology already, and they're really sophisticating this. And this will lead somewhere, and they will have technological advantage. If we stop research on this type of AI solutions, then it will mean that we will be behind those who will not stop research. And I'm not sure that we can all say that the whole world is not going to work on this.
It's interesting, I had exactly the same sort of topic discussion this morning, where we talked about how the world looked global just a few years ago, and now actually very much less so, and technology that was once meant to be sort of agnostic and very global is actually the main weapon on these, battlegrounds between the various regions in the world. So slightly pessimistic ending, I'm afraid, but otherwise, I'm just wondering, are there any questions or comments from the floor before we close? It doesn't look like it. So in that case, I'm not going to let artificial intelligence keep you from the certainly not artificial lunch. And so let me thank the panelists, Pál, Petr, and Stepan. A round of applause. Thank you.